Is One Piece worth starting in 2024? I think that's a good question, and honestly, it's a big commitment because you look at this manga has been around. Basically, it will have survived not only its own Big Free era, it might actually end after the current Big Free era. And because of that, let's go ahead and talk about whether it's actually worth your time to start this particular journey. Okay, I think the first thing we have to get out of the way is yes, this is a long manga. It's a very long manga. It's over 1,000 chapters right now, and while technically being in its final arc, it could go for at least 100 more. Probably even more than that if we're being very honest about how Oda writes. I mean, he's been saying he's going to bring this series to an end every year for the last 10 years. Yeah, it's probably still not ending anytime soon. We'll probably see Jujutsu Kaisen and MHA end before this one does. Because of that, I think that there's a strong possibility for you to look at that and go, oh, that's too much reading. It's a lot of reading, but really think about it this way. If you enjoy One Piece, or you enjoy its anime, can you think of another series that if you loved it, you wouldn't actually want it to have over 1,000 episodes? I mean, can you honestly say you wouldn't want that many canon episodes of Naruto? You wouldn't want that many canon episodes of MHA? I mean, at the height of those shows, I surely would have. So, and the funny thing about One Piece is that it's done very little filler. Even, in manga standards, Oda doesn't do a lot of branching out storylines that don't go anywhere. They will always usually loop back into the story somehow. Um, and then in the anime, they were very much discouraged from really seeming to contribute in the form of filler, which I'm grateful for to know because as we go forward, even with the live action adaptation, which we will hopefully get allegedly all 12 seasons for. It's got at least 12 seasons of material, apparently. I'm super psyched if that's true. That probably won't borrow too heavily into filler either. So it's a lot of material, but it's worth it if you can get into it. So let's talk about why you might want to get into it. Well, let's start with the one you've probably heard of, because whenever anyone talks positive about One Piece, it's almost unilaterally about the world building. Oda built this incredibly, detailed world with a variety of different places, technologies, and peoples for you to go ahead and take a look at. And honestly, it's still cool. It's a great place to imagine being in this world because there's so many different factors to it. It has a logic to it that makes sense internally once you start to understand how this world works in total. And each time you learn something about the world, it will continue to build onto the nature of the adventure. Nothing is ever kind of like strictly a one-off when it comes to the characters learning about something, whether it is, the history of Gol Roger, or it is the Poneglyphs, or it is, different devil fruits. There's a lot that's contributed into this that's very important. And as you learn about it, it feels like slowly putting a very large puzzle together. So the world history is definitely a factor, but it's not the only one. And some people will be surprised by this one, but characters are a big deal as to why this series is so good. Because when people think of great characters in manga, they tend to lean in one of two directions. They look at Naruto, because they tend to look at the way that particularly Naruto himself was written. A lot of the characters in his own series weren't actually given that treatment, so they tend to really slide on the fact that he was primarily the most interesting, well-written one, and everybody else just kind of had a stereotype attached to them. Not all of them, but he was kind of an exception. And then they go Bleach. And I don't really have a problem with Bleach characters. I like a lot of Bleach characters. Ichigo is a subtle protagonist, which I do like. Having somebody that doesn't constantly yell in your face is always nice. But the funny thing is that Luffy kind of combines the energetic nature of Naruto, along with being maybe just a little thick in the head, but not stupid. I feel like Naruto could be sometimes very, not even necessarily like he was stupid, like he didn't know things. He would be so obstinate he wouldn't grasp them. Luffy's not that way. He doesn't always get things, but he knows to listen to people who do get things. And that's a big contributing source. He also can be quiet. He can be an empathetic character, which I think sometimes draws more on, Ichigo and particularly taking care of your close friend group. In that way, all the characters are interesting. I think all of them have really interesting backstories. All of them are interesting presences within the story. Nami kind of being the one that keeps everybody together and tries to keep them from killing themselves. Usopp being like an inventor, and kind of the coward, but maybe the one who reasonably looks at the situations they're in and goes, "Oh, geez, we actually might not live for this." Frankie being the person who carries the weight of somebody else who left something to him, which, to granted, is a lot of people, but in his particular way, he carries the dream of carrying everyone. I mean, he maintains the ship. Nico Robin and her whole history is so well interwoven into the story. And then, Sanji and Zoro. Zoro doesn't have a great backstory, but he's such a great character and he's so cool that you let it go. He's kind of like Kenpachi from Bleach. And then I think with Sanji, he's not always my favorite character, but I think that his backstory is so well laid out. It's so good. And it goes for all the Straw Hats and every other character they meet. So it's definitely worth getting involved in One Piece if you like good character development, both in your main characters, but then in your side characters as well. Now, forewarning, depending on how you choose to start this series, you could be in for a rough spot. I personally did manga. I read the manga. I'm still reading the manga. I am at least over halfway through, I think. I'm over 600, so, there's that. But by conversely, if you choose to start the anime, which can be easier for some people, be warned, this anime was made 20 years ago. It was made over 20 years ago now, and it has not aged well in all areas. It's not horrendously horrible per se, but it's not great. And to be perfectly clear, I don't think One Piece as an animation necessarily got the best treatment in the beginning anyway, because they didn't do things like finish a lot of the backgrounds or really contribute a lot to full movement for the characters. This is a very common complaint for the One Piece anime, that it doesn't get good until like 600, 700 episodes in. There's some truth to that. It does improve if you can get into, I'm told if you can get to like second or third season, they usually do start to see improvement. But be warned, especially considering, this only came out a year before Naruto and like a year after Pokemon started. It could have gotten a little bit more attention considering how popular One Piece was at the time. It's still good. It still touches many people in their hearts, their childhood memories. And if you happen to like the style, you'll probably love it. If not, you may wish to be a manga only like me until you can get up to the point that the animation really improves. Or go ahead and do the other thing that I'm doing, which is starting the live action. It's a great representation. It's a great adaptation, because it's being done after so much of Oda's story is finished. So many more hints and Easter eggs and world building is done up front. That's going to make it way easier later. None of the changes are significant enough that I would say you have to read one or the other. You could definitely do like the manga and the live action, or do the live action and the anime. So however you want to start it, you should, and it is definitely worth starting One Piece in 2024. But why don't you go ahead and let me know what you think is the best way to start One Piece, and if you're going to start it this coming year.